Hi guys, I am Brooke and this is Pippa, and we travel full-time out of my 2011 Honda Pilot. We have been on the road since August of 2020, so we are rounding into our third year on the road. This will be my third winter on the road. So I would like to say I have a little bit of experience living on the road, living out of a vehicle. I think that makes me a little bit qualified to go ahead and give you some things to consider before moving into an SUV or getting on the road in general in any type of rig. I know for a lot of people it is maybe a last choice, a final choice before maybe becoming unhoused, or it is their best option because they have a toxic situation at home or in their current living situation. And I totally understand that this may be a rushed decision for some and that you cannot consider all of these things, or that you may not be able to plan ahead. When I first moved into the SUV, I had about 2 weeks to figure everything out and just had to figure out the rest while I was already on the road. But for those of you who do have some time and are planning to do this in the future, I want to give some things to consider before you actually move into the vehicle so that you can maybe be a little bit more prepared or kind of know what's coming. So one of the biggest things that I feel like everyone should consider, no matter what the reason is that you're moving into an SUV or getting into a nomadic lifestyle, are your goals. That is the number one thing to consider. What do you want out of living in an SUV, in a van, in an RV, in a camper, etc.? A lot of people on the internet like to demonize people for only living this lifestyle for a year or two, saying that they failed, etc. But living this lifestyle super long term is not everyone's goal. So what are your goals? Get really clear on them. And the best part about this is that they are just your goals. They don't have to be approved by every person on the internet or your family or your friends. You have a specific reason why you are interested in this lifestyle, and you need to be honest with yourself about what that is, because at the end of the day, you're the one working towards that. So is your goal to travel? Maybe you're not even concerned about saving money, but you just want to see the world, take a year off, and do it in a very efficient small space like an SUV. Maybe your goal on the flip side is to save as much money as humanly possible. Maybe eliminating that rent is to be able to save up for a down payment on a house or something like that. Maybe that's just the reason you want to live super tiny, and travel maybe isn't your biggest concern, but if you get to see some cool stuff, that's great too. Maybe your goal is to pay off debt. Maybe you want to work a string of seasonal jobs and not have rent as the overhead to pay down debt. Maybe your goal is to meet new people and be able to be on the road for that reason. Maybe you pick up seasonal jobs so you can meet different people in different parts of the country. You have to get really clear on what your goals are for living in the car, and it's okay if they change as time goes on. As you start to live the lifestyle, you can also change your goals, but being really clear about the why that you got into the car in the first place is one of the things that's going to get you through some of the tougher times, to really keep things clear and that you can evaluate whether this lifestyle is working out for you or it isn't. The next major thing to consider is your mail and your residency. So many people skip over this, and if you already have an address, if you are already living in an apartment, or you have a permanent address that you use, you live with family, etc., you really need to consider what that looks like for you moving forward. Because is your registration going to expire on the road? Is your license going to expire while you're on the road? Where are you getting your bills? Where are you registering your health insurance, your car insurance, etc.? All of these things need a permanent address, and almost all of them cannot be done through a PO box. I hear a lot of people say that they will just use a PO box and it'll be fine, until they realize that on so many official forms and things like that, you cannot use a PO box. And if you already don't have a physical address that's a permanent address, you can't even open a PO box, just so you know. So you need to figure out what family friend you're going to use as your your permanent residency, what state you're going to be a permanent resident in, because that's also where you're going to pay your taxes. That's also if you can register to vote or not. And so you need to look at all of your options if you need to maybe change which state your residency is in. Like for me, I have a whole video on why I moved to South Dakota, because it's really easy to be a nomad in South Dakota. There's no state income tax, so I can run my business there. I can have my residency there. I can have my insurance there. And I have a legal address that is on my license. If you're using a family or a friend's address, do you trust them to hold your mail, to get your registration cards, everything like that, to get your W-2 sent to you when you have to do taxes and things? So you really need to make sure you're trusting that person and how you're going to work out that situation. It is something to consider though, because it impacts a lot more things than you realize. The next one to follow up after that is, what are you going to do about money? Are you going to live off savings? Are you going to work seasonally? Are you going to work a remote job? Or are you going to pick up freelance jobs on the road? Are you going to do contract work? What are you going to do to sustain this lifestyle and fulfill that goal at the beginning that you established? How are you going to do that? There are so many different ways to do things on the road. I get the question of what I do all the time. I am a content creator. I've made lots of videos on jobs that I've worked in the past. I've done a lot of gig work and freelance work online before I ever was a content creator. If your goal is to become a travel content creator, that's totally great, but you have to remember that things like that take time. It took me about a year of posting on YouTube and TikTok before I ever started making any sustainable money. So do you have a year of plans or savings or etc. before you become a content creator? And do you know what you're going to do with your budget, etc.? I know the job thing is what holds a lot of people back, but there are a lot of options and I've made videos on them, so check them out on my channel. Again, going hand in hand then with your job, should you relocate from where you currently are? If your plan isn't really to travel, should you relocate out of maybe the town or the city or the area that you live in to be able to live a little bit cheaper, pick up seasonal jobs, etc.? A lot of people go out west and work seasonally at national parks in the summer, and then go to mountain areas like Colorado to work seasonally at ski resorts or something in the winter. So should you relocate to pick up those seasonal jobs so you can save the most money and then you're not really traveling as much? Do you live in a really high cost of living area and should maybe spend some of your time in a lower cost of living area? Is it illegal to sleep in your car in the city that you live in? Obviously, it's going to be really difficult and stressful for you to stay there. Should you relocate to a maybe more van life travel friendly city and kind of branch out a little bit? You need to start looking at some of those things and some of those rules. Download the apps iOverlander, Campendium, freecampsites.net, etc. to see if there's even options in your area to sustain staying in your car long term, and maybe consider some other cities to move to or relocate to make things easier and less stressful on yourself. Going along with that, where are you going to park at night? Again, you have to consider that you are doing this full time. If you especially are wanting to save money, sure, you can get a hotel or a campground in a pinch, but that is really going to eat into your money savings and money goals, or just make this a higher cost of living than you may realize. If you are spending $30 to $100 a night because you don't have parking or places to sleep at night in the area you're choosing to be in. So again, that's going to go kind of hand in hand with relocating. You need to start downloading some of those apps like I talked about, and I've made videos on how I park, and I can make more of how you find those free spots so you can meet your goals. One of the biggest ones I find is sleeping in your car. Have you ever slept in your car overnight? You should start. But while you still have the option to go sleep in your bed, you need to be trying out ways to sleep in your car now before it becomes your everyday. I would say this is actually one of the most important functional things you need to consider before getting on the road, because a lot of times I see so many people leave this to the last few weeks before they leave or have to move into their car, and they realize that the plan they thought in their head about how they were going to logistically sleep in their car doesn't really work or isn't comfortable, and they get a really terrible night's sleep. And then if you are driving, you're trying something new for the first time, you don't have a bed to go back to in an apartment or house, etc. Sleep deprivation is one of the quickest ways to spiral into poor decision making and, can really wear on your mental health. So you really need to start to consider how you are going to sleep in your car. Are you going to take the seats out? Do you need to build something? If you build something, have you actually tested it and slept on it? Is it comfortable? Can you get a good night's sleep even in the safety of your driveway? It is something that you need to start to consider as early as possible, because that is up to the individual. You can look at every single car life video or SUV life video on YouTube as a platform, and none of those ways that all of us do it may not work out for you. Everybody and need is so different. So you need to consider what's the most comfortable way for you to sleep and start trying those out. Along with that, you need to figure out what you're going to do with all of your stuff. So I'm assuming you're moving out of at least a bedroom that you are staying somewhere, whether that's at your parents' house, whether you're renting a room somewhere, all the way up to I'm moving out of a house and you have a whole house worth of stuff. What are you going to do with it all? This is going to tie back in with your goals at the beginning. So if you're only planning to do this for 2 years to save up money to buy a house, maybe you don't want to get rid of all of your current furniture and you want to go ahead and put that in storage instead of selling it, so when you do buy that house, you have something to put in the house. Or if you are just wanting to do this as a year off to travel and everything you have is just kind of from IKEA or it's hand-me-downs, maybe you want to sell that to have some spending money on your 1-year trip so you don't have to work as many jobs while your goal is to travel. This, again, is going to be different for everybody's situation. You have to decide what you want to take with you and what you want to leave behind, and maybe what you want to sell or put in storage. You are the only person that knows what items you have and which ones you can part with and which ones you maybe want to keep for the future. So just because you want to live super tiny doesn't mean you have to get rid of everything you own. So you need to figure out what you're going to do with all of your things and what's going to be in the car with you while you're traveling. Another thing to consider is, what are those things that you want to take with you while you're traveling? What are those basics that you've seen all over the internet that so many people have recommendations on what the basics are, but what are the basics for you? You have to remember that you are the most important one. It does not matter how many people recommend all these different things. What do you feel like you need to have with you? A lot of people wouldn't consider a stuffed animal as one of their basics that they need, but maybe it's really sentimental to you and it really makes you feel safe. You can bring that along. Are you going to want a cooler, a fridge? Maybe that is something that's non-negotiable for you because maybe you have medication that needs to be refrigerated, or you have a certain dietary need that you want, whereas people like me can kind of go back and forth with having a fridge or not having one. Maybe you're really set on having a fixed bed. You don't have to roll up your bed to be able to use the other seats for storage all the time, so maybe you want to bring a little bit less with you. You have to decide what those basics are and give yourself some flex time while living in the vehicle to figure out what those things are. I will say, from my experience, bringing the least amount of things as possible and then adding to it later is the best option, but I know it's hard to pare it down if you haven't done it yet. That leads me into my next point, is to start practicing now. Start doing whatever you're wanting to do now. Start cutting back on water usage, start cutting back on showers, start practicing whatever pee poop method you're wanting to use now, start doing some overnights in your car, start moving some stuff in there to see how it goes. Can you spend an entire day at a park entertaining yourself without the comforts of your apartment or your house? Start practicing it now so you know what you're getting yourself into. There are so many people I see, and then I feel like it is one of the biggest mistakes is to build out an entire rig and never practice living in it or shaking it down on a trip or going on like a 2 or 3 week kind of test trip or anything like that to see how it actually goes when you still have somewhere to come back to make adjustments before it does become your full-time reality. And the last and final recommendation I have for you of like things to consider is how much time you're going to give yourself to adjust. All of these topics are important, but the adjustment period is something that I see so many people be so hard on themselves for when they first get on the road, first move into a vehicle, etc. You are making a huge life change. No matter how excited you are about it, how ready you are for it, when it becomes your reality, it is so very different. You need to give yourself some grace and you need to give yourself some time to adjust, to make some mistakes, to figure things out, to be bored, to be overstimulated by everything that's going on and not feeling like you have a place in the world because you're trying something so incredibly different from anything that you've done for before. People forget that this is a total like subculture that you now have entered into. You are kind of removing yourself from society and everything that you have been taught the way things work and putting yourself into a new subculture of how people live in this country, and it is jarring. People can get really homesick really quickly and not realize that that was going to happen and not even give themselves time to readjust to how that feels. And even when that high of like, oh, I did it, I've met my goal, dies down and you kind of get a little bit of that, you almost get like a post goal reaching depression that happens afterwards. Like you're on this high, you're traveling for a while, you're in the car, everything's exciting, and then a couple weeks later you realize like, oh, this is just my life now, and it's not as exciting as it was because now it is your reality, it is the way that you live. Not to say that it's not great to meet your goal, but you need to give yourself time to then get out of that valley and get really excited about the next thing that you're going to do, and to give yourself some time to work through the challenges that pop up that we all face and figure them out instead of just saying, I'm giving up, this wasn't what I expected, etc. You can obviously give yourself an out, but I think you should, before you even get on the road, give yourself a set amount of time of how long you are going to try it before you pull the plug. You can say, I want to try this for a certain amount of days before I really pull the plug, and really give yourself some time to adjust. So I hope this helps giving you some things to consider before moving into your car or getting on the road. At the end of the day, this lifestyle can work for a lot of people, but I would not say that it works long term for everyone because we all have different needs out of our lives. So these are some things to really sit down and seriously consider if this is something that you're planning on. And I hope that helps to move your decision along. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye!